Oh my goodness, any more technical difficulties today, and I'm going to call the technical gods and call it a day. Morning, everybody. It is week 1 of your playoffs. Let's get this thing done. We'll be back here in about 30 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing going again. Technical difficulties all over the place. I didn't even get to watch the intro right there. I just had to rely on these two. On my left, my man, Jeff. Jeff, how are we doing today?
Oh, I tell you, it's exciting. We're getting down to the wire. Typical first week of the fantasy playoffs for those who made it. Congratulations. Hope you do well and move on. For those who didn't, better luck next year. But what are you going to do? I'll have to be saying better luck next year to Joe after our matchup today. So I'm going down to you, Joe. How's it going, bro?
Dude, 50. CBS says it's 50-50, neck and neck, foreskin to foreskin. This is going to be a tight one. And the other thing that sucks about it, too, is I got questions that I need answers to for this lineup, but I guess I'll go with whatever the opposite of whatever you say today.
There you go. That's the best way to do that. But what if Jeff paid me before the show to give the wrong, or maybe he didn't and you did? Like, that's going to be the one thing you guys are both going to have to sit there and think. So which one of you guys had the deeper pockets? Which one of you guys owns their own business now? Hint, hint, wink, wink, Jeff. There's still a chance. No, it's pretty cool that you guys are playing against each other in the fantasy playoffs. That's always awesome. I know I definitely had a couple of bye weeks this week. I definitely had a couple of the wrong kind of bye weeks this week and a couple of my dynasty leagues, which always sucks. But, man, here we are. We're here for it. Are there any matchups you guys are, like, pretty in particular stoked on today?
Well, what should be interesting is, and actually Joe just said it, is the Buffalo-Detroit game. A lot of people are saying this could be a Super Bowl preview, but I'll have to – I must confess that until one of them proves that they can actually get there – the Bills have done it but 30 years ago. I don't even know if the Lions have ever been in a Super Bowl. But it should be the top-notch offenses as we've seen. The Bills can get scored on. The Lions can get scored on. I actually took the Bills because I can't see them losing 2 weeks in a row, but Detroit is a juggernaut. What are your thoughts?
For me, I like that game. I think the Bills definitely are going to bounce it back. They're a strong team. They shouldn't have lost that game, man. Boy, that really kicked their butts as far as home field advantage goes and things like that. They're going to be playing from way behind. And a lot of people have got to beat the Chiefs, which is tough as heck. As well as the Chargers. There's a few teams in there that have to lose a whole lot of games for the Bills to not have to go through Kansas City yet again if they want that Super Bowl. So kind of sucks. We got our man Trans-Siberian checking in. I love to see stuff like this. He says he made it in. He secured a spot despite having Etienne and Rice, which is tough right there. But he said, thanks to you guys helping me get there, probably mostly by listening to the opposite of some of the things we said, to be honest. Enjoy your football playoffs if you're in. Trans-Siberian, always good to hear you checking in, man. Definitely love to see that you came in there with that first round bye. Guys, do you have anything to add for that? Because we'll be ready for you next week as well, my man.
He should throw on hashtag Gabe Davis, hashtag AJ Dillon, hashtag Tyler Boyd. But the funny you bring up Etienne and you asked what matchup we're intrigued by. I'll tell you what nobody is intrigued by is the New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. You want to talk about just a lame duck of a game. If anybody is watching that, I have no idea who that would be. But
I'll tell you, Rodgers' girlfriend. That'd be about it.
His roster proves how crazy the fantasy season ends up being because he got no production out of his second and fourth round pick pretty much for most of the season, and he ended up with a first-round bye. In our league, I drafted Christian McCaffrey, number 2 overall, and got literally 0 production from him and still weaseled in a 8-5 or 7-6 record. It's funny how different your rosters look now than they did after the draft. That's for sure.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that too, Joe, because I had a gut feeling about McCaffrey. I had the number 1 overall pick in my other league, and I went with Bijan Robinson, so I dodged that bullet on McCaffrey, but I didn't even make the playoffs in that other league, even though I had the insight to not take McCaffrey.
And
so
Bijan was pretty good this year.
He was. But I'll tell you, I had some injuries too, just like Rashee Rice, just like Trans-Siberian did. But you're right, man. It's all about staying on top of the waiver wire, seeing the trends and kind of who's doing what. There's always a rookie who surprises you. So it's not necessarily all about the draft. A big part of it obviously is, but it's staying on top of it as you go throughout the year.
Real quick, when you look at the schedule today, like 1 o'clock, there's not one game at 1 o'clock where there's 2 teams that are 500 or above playing each other. But then, and I just hadn't looked yet, but 4 o'clock, you got Bills, Lions, Bucks, Chargers, both over 500. Steelers, Eagles, obviously 10-3 versus 11-2, and then you finish it off tonight with the Packers at Seattle. That's a nice late afternoon slate. I'm gonna settle into some chicken cutlets a little later on, maybe a little red wine. And no, those are some good late games today.
Well, it looks like all the Gabe Davis hate's finally going to come back on poor Jeff over here. Trans-Siberian says Joe beat down today. Hashtag Joe beat down today. So Trans-Siberian letting it be known that he's going to be going for Joe. I just can't wait to see the matchups. You know, that game on Thursday night, boy, if you had any players in that, like I saw Andy Holloway, as much as I don't like the fantasy footballers, and it's nothing personal against them. It's more of a jealousy thing than anything with those guys. But did you guys read where he said, hey, what time does Cooper Kupp play tomorrow? Yesterday on Twitter, man, I was like, man, that's hilarious. Because if you had Cooper Kupp in your lineup, man, he 0 for 3, I think. 0 yards, got you a big stinky 0. What did you guys think of that game on Thursday? Did you see that coming? I thought that was going to be a little more high scoring.
I mean, the Rams put up 44 on Buffalo the week prior.
Yep.
San Francisco put up, I believe, 38 on the Bears the week prior. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. That was inexplicable to me.
I had the Rams, and you guys know I'm in this confidence pool where you just pick the winner, not necessarily based on the spread, but you just pick the outright winner. So I had the Rams a little lower on the scale, but so I kind of expected a Rams win because San Francisco, for all that hype coming out before the season started, you got Brock Purdy, who was looked at as a possible MVP. You got Christian McCaffrey, another possible MVP, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, you name it, they got the weapons. And for whatever reason, they can't necessarily put it together. I remember the first game of the year, I believe they played the Jets, or their first game, at least of the year, they played the Jets. And there was I think they beat them down that game, and it just kind of showed, okay, San Francisco's back. They're going to making a run back to the Super Bowl. Now they're 6-8 looking up at, I mean, luckily their division is close enough where everybody seems to be within 1 or 2 games of each other. But if they were in a different division, they're just flat out toast. It's just such a surprise to see such a great team down so low.
Well, they got crushed with injuries. I mean, McCaffrey didn't play 3 whole games this year. Ayuk sucked and then got hurt for the whole year. Then they got Trent Williams, the offensive lineman. He's been out most of the year. They lost Jordan Mason.
Well, you're not wrong, but every team has kind of dealt with that. I mean, you have the Rams who dealt with Nakua and Kupp. I mean, you got across the board, you can kind of point to a bunch of different things. It's just San Francisco was one of those teams that did have or seemingly had that depth to be before the season started that you expected them to be back in the playoff for the Super Bowl mix, and they're just straight up not. So
I agree with that. I'm with you. I thought the Rams were going to win this game. I'm a little infatuated with the Rams now, like getting everybody back when they did. And now, you've got a Super Bowl champion quarterback and coach there or whatnot. And I don't think they have a great defense, and that will probably be their downfall. But I wouldn't want to have to play them with that offense. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's very high octane, very fast. They score punches and bunches really, really quick. How are we feeling about, like, say, Jalen Waddle today? This guy's been fairly inconsistent throughout the season. Definitely let us down more than he's picked us up. But over the past few weeks, this guy's been ripping it apart. How do you feel about him? Joe, I'll go ahead and let you lead that one off.
Yeah, I love that game offensively today, Miami at Houston. And I mean, Tua in that Miami offense, it took a while. It took a while to stick with them, but they are hot now. and even more so than Waddle. Like Tyreek Hill's still in the low 7,000s on the DFS sites. I think his over-under for yards this week is 71, and he crushed that last week. I kind of feel like he's back, and that's kind of a gimme. I think Waddle's going to have a decent game today too, because I got to believe Houston's going to score some points. Like you would think that's a high-scoring game. Now you're coming out of a San Francisco Rams game that had 0 touchdowns in it after they combined for 80 points the week prior. So I don't want to fall in that trap again, but you would think this would be a higher scoring game. Tua's been lighting it up. They still have a glimmer of hope playoff wise. Houston's trying to keep control of that division, I believe. Right. So I like that game today. I think that's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit more typical than your medium scoring. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. What do you think here, Jeff?
Yeah, a lot of hype behind Miami's offense, and another one that just kind of fell off a little bit. You expected Tyreek Hill to be fantastic. I'm sure he got taken in the first round of basically every league, and he just hasn't come through. And so first on Waddle, and then I got a comment about Tyreek Hill. But so Waddle finally the last few weeks has been getting hot because the guy's talented. He can make some plays and get some points on the fantasy scoreboard. But up until the last 3 weeks before that, his most productive week was week 1, which was 16.7. This is according to FanDuel. Okay, so after week 1, you're looking at, here we go, 6.5, 4.6, 5.6, 6.6, 1.6, 6.5, 6.6, 7.1, and 4.7. So that's all the way up until the New England game on November 24th, where he put up 27.4. So he's finally seeming like the guy we expected him to be, but it took, 90 weeks to get there. It's just been amazing to see that Miami's offense hasn't been what we thought it would be, including the running backs as well. But here's a crazy stat that I was thinking of about Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill has had more children this year than he has touchdowns. So apparently he's had 5 kids this year and he has 4 touchdowns. That is the most ridiculous. You want to talk about dumb stats or ridiculous?
That's great.
That is the most ridiculous stat. This guy truly his game on the field is fantastic. His pullout game, awful. I don't know what to say for it. So, it's just that it blows my mind that this guy that is actually a thing. More kids this year than touchdowns.
If Tyreek Hill and Antonio Brown ever vacationed together, it'd be the whole plane would just be their 2 families.
Yeah, everybody be lined up in the first or second bracket in Southwest. Be like, okay, well, all these people look the same. That's interesting.
Or Nick Cannon.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill's up there with Nick Cannon right now. I don't know who has more kids, but yeah, Miami wise, and the next thing I'll throw back at you guys, or what's your thoughts are, Mike, too, because we had big expectations for A-Chain and Mostert, and they were probably drafted pretty high. Maybe not necessarily Mostert, but certainly A-Chain within some leagues, and it hasn't panned out at all. The Miami offense just has been a dud,
No, I agree. Miami hasn't brought it as hard as they should be able to. I think that concussion really shook things up. I think you had a team that was really worried about kind of getting this guy back, and I think that might have lingered about 4 extra weeks than it really needed to, because now that they're kind of starting to put it together, they've looked a lot better, but they still seem to get in those little stagnant lulls where they go, about 4 or 5 drives in a row where they can't really put anything together. And then the things that they are putting together aren't really productive and, at best getting field goals. So, I think that team has just been that team just needs a full season of being able to play football. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, though. Tua seems to like to lead with his head, seems to get rock throttled and a lot of head trauma there. I don't see it getting better. I see that actually getting worse.
I'll tell you what, with them real quick, too. What fantasy-wise, what I've learned with them is you got to go matchup and weather. They're playing a shitty defense today or maybe an average defense today in Houston in a game where weather is not going to be an issue. I like their offense. You put them in Green Bay next Monday night, you got to stay away from them. You can't do it. But it feels like they're super matchup and weather driven at this point from at least a fantasy output perspective.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that there. Let's see what Trans will say. Marion said, he says, curious, Jeff and Joe's quarterback and running back secretly rooting for Jeff. Now,
Right.
as long as everybody knows that if I was in this matchup, Trans-Siberian would be going for me. Like,
Yeah, touche. But to answer, I'll tell you what. This is such a tight matchup. At least projected wise. We'll give him the quick rundown.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm going to see. You can talk it up. I'm going to try to pull it up in a minute.
We're in a super flex league, meaning that you can have 2 quarterbacks on your roster. So I've got Bo Nix and Drake May. Obviously, I would not have predicted those to be my top 2 guys at the start of the season. I had Kirk Cousins, who was supposed to be my main guy, and he's fallen flat completely. Well, luckily, Bo Nix has kind of saved me. Joe's got Jaden Daniels and Tua Tagovailoa. We all know Jaden Daniels had an amazing start, but has kind of just floundered. Has some great gains in between some duds, and Tua's been consistently mediocre. Then when you go down running back wise, I'm looking at, Joe's got Charbonnet and McCormick, and I've got Hubbard and Pacheco. Wide receiver, I think Joe's got an edge on me. He's got CeeDee Lamb, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I've got DJ Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe we're more kind of even than I thought. Tight ends, he's got Andrews. I got McBride. Flex, he's got McLaurin. I got Rashad White. And then defense-wise, he's got Ravens versus the Giants, and I've got Broncos versus the Colts. So, as tight as a matchup as you can get. And I think, Joe, you swept the season series with me. I think I'm 0-2 versus Joe this year, and I still made the playoffs. But he's had my number up until today.
So let me see real quick here. I literally just booted myself off the freaking stream trying to do
I
this.
saw that. I was like, why is there 2 Joes? I'm over here like we're stuck in a Joe vortex, which all right,
here we go.
Because you like Pearl Jam, but that's about the only thing that's saving us.
So CBS has got us projected literally within, what is that? 11 100ths of a point. And to Jeff's point, see, I like having the guys going later. I can't stand having all my guys.
You got it. You got it.
What do you think, Mikey?
That looks like a good matchup right there. The thing that I can't really understand here is who still uses CBS Fantasy, bro. Like,
dude, we got like 25 years of league history on this thing. I love it.
I'm so used to CBS, man.
Like the league championship rings and stuff like that. Yep, okay, you got me there. I am in a Yahoo league myself, so I guess I can relate there. But no, that looks like a hell of a matchup, man. I really like Zach Charbonnet today. I'll tell you that right now. Looking like Kenneth Walker's trending out. That's one thing. Have we gone over injuries yet?
Actually, speaking of that, Joe, you got any injury updates yet?
Yeah, let's do that here. Let me get back off. Let me ask you a question real quick. What do you do with I've got Devonta Adams on my bench there, and like it's Smith and Jigba or McLaurin or CeeDee Lamb, and I just don't feel like I can bench any of those guys. But I want to play Adams. I know, Jeff, you made the point about that game being a joke, which I agree from the perspective of obviously there's no playoff implications or anything like that. But like the Jet offense Aaron Rodgers has played his best couple games of the year statistically. His last couple of weeks, Adams was finally over 20 last week. It doesn't feel right to have him on the bench, but I don't know where to go with that. Injury-wise today, it's a pretty clean week. Last week, we had a lot of running backs out. Tony Pollard, questionable, expected to play. Breece Hall looks likely to be back this week. Bucky Irving, expected to play again. That's a tough one, though, because he was questionable all week. Last week, game time decision, he played, and I think he got hurt on his first carry and didn't come back in. So I'm not sure what you're supposed to do with him today. That's pretty much it for running back. You look at wide out today, nothing really that new. We know Pickens is out again for Pittsburgh. That kind of sucks for them in that matchup against Philly. Ladd McConkey looking like he is a true game time decision, but the Chargers are optimistic he's going to be able to play. He's become pretty relevant this year. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Josh Downs is questionable. It's a pretty clean week injury-wise. Again, kind of impressive. Last week we had a lot, but other than last week, it's been a rather healthy year from a fantasy perspective.
Which leads us actually, those injury updates leads us nicely, Mike, if you want to pop up the question coming up here from Mateo. Looks like he's got a flex question. That includes, yeah. So you got Bucky Irving, Jonnu Smith, or Quentin Johnston at flex. So Bucky Irving, you said, Joe, he's likely to play, or we're not sure.
He's likely to play, but he's still technically questionable. And again, this happened to him last week, and he ended up, I'll pull it up right now. Last week, he ended up playing 10 snaps only, and then he got hurt because his back tightened up. So,
and Rachaad White ended up with a monster game. I actually had him on my bench, unfortunately, because Bucky Irving had been who he has been. But Irving, man, I tell you, if he's healthy, that's the way to go. If he's not, and you're choosing between Jonnu Smith and Quentin Johnston, that's a tough one, man. I'd say Smith is a tough one to start over Johnston because Miami does have the rest of those weapons. We expect Hill to have a lot of touches. We expect Waddle to get some points. So when you get down the pecking order, can Jonnu Smith put up a touchdown and a few catches? Probably. But I think more likely you're looking at Quentin Johnston, especially if Ladd McConkey isn't 100%. That seems to be their number one. I mean, I would go with Irving, in my opinion, if he's healthy and it looks like he's going to play and have some more opportunities, because Johnston's going to get you maybe 6-7 catches. But if he's not healthy, and I'm looking at Johnston, what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, Jonnu Smith, his last 4 games, DraftKings wise, anyways. Last week was only 13, 3 for 44 and a touchdown, which again for a tight end is not a bad week. Prior to that, 24, 23, and 31. He went through a 3-week span with 25 catches, 301 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Bizarro. I mean, a completely healthy Bucky Irving, and I'm going Bucky Irving. But given his injury situation, I mean, if we're talking a playoff game here, I think I go Jonnu Smith to get my 10 to 15 points and not have it kill me. I'd be worried about playing Bucky Irving.
Before I get your take, Mike, I'm curious if Mateo can pop up who his other tight end is. But go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say Tyreek Hill's been catching more babies than he's been catching balls. So, I mean, as far as it goes, Jonnu Smith has looked really, really good. He's been catching those touchdowns where Tyreek Hill's been catching custody lawyers.
Hill's obviously not catching feelings because he's with none of these women as far as relationship-wise.
The one thing you can't catch is the cheetah, they say. But they didn't know that that's what they were talking about. But, Jonnu Smith is really hard to ignore. He's had a lot of good target shares. He's had a lot of good games. He's, especially in the red zone, seems to be the number one look. And he's been getting that number one look and been getting going on each one. So, for me, I kind of like Jonnu Smith here. But, again, if we're going to play volume, which I think we have to play volume here, I like Irving if he starts. Quentin Johnston is definitely the odd man out for me on this line. But, if Irving starts, I feel like I'm going to have to start him, but I'm not going to like it. I feel like I'm going to feel best here with Jonnu.
But, Mateo, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off. But, Mateo, who's your starting tight end? Because if you're starting somebody over Jonnu Smith, I'm curious as to who that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead and drop us that tight end there, Mateo, if you get a chance.
To Jeff's point, too, if McConkey were to not play, I definitely like Quentin Johnston from a DFS perspective today, given what his price would be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like the tight end, or I like the receiving core for that team. Seems like they're doing a little bit more going on, each week. They seem to win games on the ground, though. That's the one thing that kind of worries me about the Chargers is they seem to win their games with solid defense and with a running back offense.
Well, and Joe brought up Quentin Johnston from a DFS standpoint. I tell you, man, and DFS wise, this is a great week to get some value wide receivers. I mean, I'm just looking at Quentin Johnston at 5,900 on FanDuel. Right above that, you're looking at Adam Thielen, who's at 6,100, who's gotten a ton of targets and a decent amount of points the last 2-3 weeks. Then you're also looking at Ridley, who has been disappointing, but he's seemingly the main target there in Tennessee, and we know that you can throw all over the place on Cincinnati, so that's an interesting one to put up there from a DFS standpoint. And you're also looking at Xavier Worthy, 6,000, Amari Cooper, 5,900. He's starting to get more involved in that Buffalo offense, so a lot of value. I mean, even looking at Westbrook Ekine, however you pronounce his last name, he's at 5,800. A lot of value, so you can pick up either the Josh Allen or Saquon Barkley from a DFS standpoint. Here's
my value DFS play of the week, seeing we're on the subject. Stone Smart, Chargers tight end. Disley's out this week. Disley went out early in that game last week, and Smart went for 3 catches and 54 yards, and he looked pretty freaking good. And I'm not going to lie to you, I never heard of the guy. But he's 2,600 on DraftKings. They're playing the Tampa Bay team that can put up some points. So I feel like at the tight end position where, that's the one position you can risk to maybe not hit it out of the park on, but Stone Smart for 2,600. Get you 10 points, it's a win.
I feel like Stone Smart is the exact same type of smart that I am. So
in this very moment,
I like Stone Smart a lot there. Another guy that I've kind of got my eyeballs on today, as far as it goes, as far as cheap value, because I do like Adam Thielen. I do have him in my lineup today. Another guy that I saw out there that was is Tim Patrick. He's seeming to be the number 2 in that offense, and he's getting a lot of targets, getting a lot of touchdowns with him. I really like Tim Patrick today. He's only 5,100 against the Bills. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton, I imagine. I think this is going to be one of those shootouts. Give it to me. We got a question here from this fine lady. She says, sit 2, play 2 wide receiver spots. Waddle, Smith and Jigba, Moore, and Duvon Vele. Joe, lead us off.
That's DJ Moore?
Yes, sir.
Ooh, well, I mean, I do like see, the Bears have been so bizarre. Like they finally have, like, I think Caleb Williams had 3 straight games where he went like over 20 DraftKings points, and Keenan Allen had those games, and DJ Moore started having big games. But then it kind of went right back last week in that game against San Francisco. You definitely play Smith and Jigba here. You know what? At Minnesota on a Monday night, that's a tough matchup. Waddle, man. I'm going to go Smith and Jigba and DJ Moore, but you could sell me on going Waddle instead of Moore.
I agree with that, actually. I like Waddle today. Again, man, it's tough because this guy has been more of a letdown than he's been a benefit. I like Smith and Jigba. I just don't feel like it's a guy I can sit confidently. But, man, DJ Moore, when he gets hot, and they seem to find a way to get him the ball in a lot of different instances. And Vele, I think he's the guy out for me here. I do like Devon Vele today, but not as much as I like Waddle and Smith and Jigba and Moore. But I think I'm going to lean the first 2, Waddle and Smith and Jigba. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I think we can all agree of these 4, Smith and Jigba, surprisingly, is the top option, which before the season started, you would not have said that, but he's turned into or it seems like he's turned into the number 1 option over there, or if not number 1A in Seattle. So it really comes down to Vele. I'm kind of pushing off to the side. It comes down to really Waddle and Moore. Yeah, I mean, so I would say I'm leaning DJ Moore. Yeah, he maybe didn't necessarily have the best fantasy numbers last week, but he's still getting a lot of targets from Caleb Williams. And yes, Minnesota's got a good defense, but Minnesota has, over the last the second half of the year, is allowing more points. Their defense is giving up more points than they had at the beginning of the year. So this being an in-division game, an important game, at least, just for bragging rights. I know that Chicago is kind of out of it a little bit, but they want to play spoiler, for a lot of these teams. So I think DJ Moore will have more chances than Waddle. So give me JSN and more on that.
Actually, you sold me. I like that. I like that approach as well. I am sitting Waddle over Moore in that instance, just because I do agree with that take. I think that I'm going to feel a lot better with that guy coming in as opposed to the latter with Waddle. Just because, and then the bad thing is Waddle could just torch it. He could have 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he's shown this year he can also have 1 catch for 7 yards, and that's the end of your day. So I like that. We're going to go with Smith and Jigba and Moore. Kevin Turner says, what's going on, fellas? He's got a 10-team half PPR. Who to flex? Breece Hall, Jaden Reed, Hopkins, or Elijah Moore? Jeff, lead us off.
Well, I think, Joe, you said Breece Hall is likely to play today.
He is.
So, I mean, as we usually say, Ty goes to the running back on that. I mean, you throw a little bit of a wrench in the works with the half PPR, but Breece Hall can still get some tosses out of the backfield. Just it really comes down to opportunity. I mean, I actually Jaden Reed. It's funny, man. He's at the beginning of the year, he's almost like fool's gold a little bit. He's had his flashes here and there, and he had that first game that just blew the doors off and just everybody was all over Jaden Reed because at least on FanDuel he had 34 points the first week and just kind of went off the rails for a couple after that. But he's had flashes here and there. You can't trust him. Can he have a big week? Sure. They're in Seattle. That's a tough environment. I can't bank on that guy having a big week. Hopkins, again, he's Cleveland will give up some passing yards. I do like D-Hop, especially from a DFS standpoint, but is he going to get more opportunity than Breece Hall? And then Elijah Moore, I think maybe is a bit of an afterthought. So I'd lean Breece Hall slightly over Reed and Hopkins. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this shouldn't be close, right? Like Breece Hall was a top 6-7 draft pick in a redraft. Like this should not even be a question, but this is tough because you're in the playoffs now. So like you've got to put the lineup that right now, week 15 has the best shot of scoring you the most points. And it's really funny to think about it, but you look at like Elijah Moore or Hopkins, Jaden Reed just threw up a 0. I can't do it. Reed could have a huge game, but like for me, I'm risk adverse. I can't play the Russian roulette with Jaden Reed. So for me, I'm looking, and I guess I can't really play Elijah Moore over Breece Hall. So I'm looking at Hopkins or Hall, and I guess I'm going to go Hall because it would be really painful to have him on my bench and watch him have a big game. And, the Chiefs have won 2 games in a row, 19-17. Mahomes hasn't thrown a touchdown. I don't think, they're more field goals, and Cleveland's still kind of a tough defense. That's not an easy game. So I'm going to go Breece Hall. But I can understand I can understand why you don't feel great about it at this point. Although I will say this, before he got hurt, which was, not last week, but the week before, his full game prior to that, he had his best game of the year. It was like 31 DraftKings points. That made me feel a little better, but been a weird year for him.
And before Mike, I just want to throw a couple things at you before you get into yours. I mean, Hopkins has been getting more attention, so he's gotten 9 targets the last couple of weeks, but the issue is the last 3 weeks he's gotten 5 receptions, 4 receptions for 35, 90, and 32 yards. Now in the 35 and 32 yard games he has had a touchdown, so that's bounced him into the double digits as far as fantasy is concerned. But I tell you, man, if he doesn't get that touchdown, then you're looking at 4 catches for 80 yards, and that just won't put me over the top for Breece Hall. I don't know what you think, Mike.
No, I actually agree. So for me, the thing is I can't. I'm just leaning more just on volume here. So I know that Breece Hall is going to get fed the ball at least probably 10 to 15 times today.
Right.
Jaden Reed might be the odd man out today. DeAndre Hopkins might be the odd man out today. Elijah Moore might be the odd man out today. So for me, it just goes back to volume, and it always leans towards volume for me. So I'm going to lean Breece Hall here as well. I think that he's the guy that I can guarantee is going to touch the ball, where those other guys are huge question marks. I mean, they have the potential, especially in a half PPR, to be way better and bigger. But I'm just not going to take that chance. I got to take the guy that I know is going to get the touches, whether or not he does anything with them. If it weren't playoff week, I would say probably Hopkins here, just because he has the highest potential, highest ceiling. But for floor, I'm playing Breece Hall. It's playoffs. We can't mess around. But I like your approach there. Yeah. Mrs. says, Mike rocked the Christmas spirit while Joe's playing Mr. Grinch. Jeff, single guy look. I love it. Yes, no. Oddly enough, just because of my technical difficulties, I had to take it to the Christmas tree today. It worked out pretty good. My lady just said she was loving that it was on there as well. So she worked really hard. She did an amazing job on our house, man. She always does.
That's good.
Cannot take any credit for that at all. I'm telling you,
a lot of Christmas spirit over there at the darling home.
Because of her. If it were for me, I'd be like, yay, it's New Year's. Let's go. Like New Year's banners, all kinds of stuff, little quick pull fireworks, all kinds of things. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about some DFS action here. I'm going to go ahead and pop my lineup here down on the screen.
While you're doing that, Mike, let me throw a couple of things at you real quick. And these aren't against Jeff because, we can't trust him at this point today. But, would you consider benching Jonathan Taylor for Pacheco today?
Oof.
I don't think I would. I feel like I'm going to play Jonathan Taylor. He still seems to get the bulk load of the carries there. Richardson seems to be running less. I think I'm playing Taylor.
All right.
What about you, Jeff?
I mean, I've got Pacheco in my lineup versus Joe. So, I mean, but Pacheco.
That's probably why he asked that. He's trying to mess with you.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, truthfully, I tell you, I might think about if I'm Joe. I mean, Taylor gets a lot of opportunity and a decent amount of carries, but he just hasn't done a whole lot with it, man. He's averaging, I mean, like for instance, a few weeks ago against the Jets, 24 carries for 57 yards. I mean, that's a worse average than Najee Harris. He is getting the opportunity and can have some big games, but he hasn't had a big game since October. So I think Pacheco really, especially against Cleveland and Pacheco, another week of being healthy again, and Hunt's not necessarily out of the equation completely, but we know Pacheco is the number one. So that I don't know.
I would totally do it. My hesitation really comes in, and to your point, Pacheco's more healthy this week, it sounds like, than he has been since he's come back. And that means something, and he's touched the ball more each week. But he hasn't scored a touchdown either since he's been back. So it's like, I'll tell you what I did. I started freaking the 49er running back in that same league, understanding that I was going to have to make a choice between Pacheco and Taylor. But yeah, Taylor's wearing on me a little bit, but I guess if you go back to the volume, it's the way to go. And Richardson doesn't run it a ton, but he does run it at the goal line. He scored all those touchdowns against the Patriots last week, or what was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's not like I don't like Pacheco. He's just, and I think he's a fantastic running back. Just the thing is, they just haven't seemed to needed to do a whole lot to win this year, and
they're not
there's
scoring
not a whole lot of offensive production coming out of that team at all, and it sucks. Like there should be. They'll turn it on when they need to turn it on, but unfortunately, that'll be well after all of us have called it quits with the fantasy playoffs and championships, because they won't need it till the playoffs. But
we've been saying it all year.
They're able to do that.
What I do like in that game, and that particular, what I do like is the Kansas City defense, and I don't know what they're going for on FanDuel or DraftKings, but we all know that Jameis Winston is good for some pick sixes, man. So and the KC defense is pretty tough. So I like the Kansas City defense that game.
Not since LASIK. No, I'm just kidding. He's still finding a way to throw that interception. Not like he was in Tampa Bay by any means, but he's still finding at least a couple of games. You're right. I think that is a good, solid defense, and that'll go ahead and just get us right into there. And this is the lineup that we're going with this week, at least me. The line I'm liking here, I like Tommy DeVito. I like the Cutlets, man. I know it's crazy, but I think they're going to be in a game where they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. On the opposite end of that spectrum, I like Derek Henry at 9,200. Baltimore should be able to punch this out pretty quick. I think Derek Henry is going to run the ball a ton. Jacobs has been looking great all season long at 8,200. He's actually kind of a value right there. I mean, we're probably going to do some adjusting here, obviously, because I still got 900 salary remaining. Tim Patrick, again, we were talking about him, 5,300. Detroit's going to have to throw the ball a boatload. Adam Lazard is back this week. Lazard has been kind of the go-to target there, even though he's two way better receivers there. Adam Lazard's been the red zone target. He's been cashing in points week after week. Thielen, love that value play there at 6,100. I know you said he torched him up last week, and Ferguson on the opposite end again, because I think Dallas is going to be able to beat Carolina pretty handily. And then Joe Mixon, I wanted a piece at least of that Houston-Miami game, and I felt like he was probably the best piece to get at $9,000. And then the Washington Commanders at New Orleans. Derek Carr won't be starting. It'll be Spencer Rattler out there today. I think that's going to be a good play. But guys, I know you want to shred it, so let's shred it. What do you guys got?
Well, no, I'll tell you what, you're opening my eyes on the Tim Patrick play, because, it's funny. Amon-Ra, who kind of became such a shoot as one of those top 5 guys where you could depend on every week, with the arrival of Jameson Williams this year being better, and now Tim Patrick coming on, and Laporta too. You don't know where the ball's going in a given week with Detroit. And then the scariest part about that is they can put 31 points up with their rushing game alone. So I'd be more apt to spend what you're going to spend on a Tim Patrick versus spending that money on an Amon-Ra at this point in the season. So I think that's one of those plays that it wasn't on my radar, but I'll be scrolling through before 1 o'clock now.
So I'll tell you right now, I really like the Henry and Jacobs combo there. It's funny because we talked a little bit earlier that you can find a lot of value this week in wide receivers. At least I couldn't find much value lower for running backs, so you have to go expensive at running back. And I'll tell you, man, finding those guys at wide receiver, that's a good. What I might look at is, you got Washington defense. It's 300 less than the Washington defense on FanDuel. You're looking at Arizona versus New England, and Arizona's home versus New England. So I think that Washington's on the road in New Orleans. We see New Orleans can score some points. So if you're going to save $300, go from Washington to Arizona. And so you said you got what, 900? So so add 1,200 to Tommy Cutlets. I'd say ditch his ass and see what we can look at as far as QB is concerned for 1,200 more. And I'm kind of doing this in real time. I don't know if you guys have an eye on it.
I agree on the DeVito piece. I think if you left this lineup the way it is, I actually really like it. And the whole key to be DeVito. Like, can you get 20 out of DeVito somehow because of trash in the fourth quarter? Because if you did, I think this lineup would absolutely cash. The one thing about New Orleans with the Washington defense today, which makes me like the Washington defense, is Carr's out. So it's like, I think it's Rattler or whoever.
Rattler, yeah, correct.
Yeah, is starting again. Taysom Hill's out too. So I'm not necessarily against that defense. To Jeff's other point, like, you got to love the running backs. Again, Jacobs is having an insane year, but it's flying under the radar because of what Barkley and Henry have done on their new teams. But Jacobs has been a freaking TD machine lately. So, I would up. I don't know. I mean, can you get somebody else at Q? How far up do you have to go to get another starting QB?
I'm looking right now. I'm having to look on my phone just because my computer, look at that, like it's even like in glory. It's just kind of sitting there.
I mean, so if you got 900 left, Mike, you can look at Caleb Williams. I mean, I get it. Wow. They're going against Minnesota, but I mean, I'll roll the dice with Caleb Williams against a tough Minnesota defense than Tommy DeVito versus a tough Baltimore defense. That's what I'm looking at there.
Man, that's a cheap play. Caleb Williams is cheap
for 71. I mean, he and Aaron Rodgers are the same price, and God, Rodgers is just toast. Can we agree that? I mean, the Jets are just a dumpster fire, always have been. We had some hopes, or Jets fans had some hopes that Rodgers was going to be the guy, and man, how this has fallen flat on its face. This is almost looking as bad as. Well, it's not going to be as bad as Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, but it's fairly close with just how bad the team is.
I agree with you. There's no doubt, and you can't argue with how bad the team is. The only thing is, fantasy-wise, Rodgers did go for 20 points last week at Jacksonville, and now they're at Miami, they're playing Jacksonville. They were at Miami last week. Now they're at Jacksonville this week, which same climate. So it wouldn't shock me if he has a trash game, those trash points where he gets to 20 or whatnot, but nothing else you said about the Jets was inaccurate. It's been a complete, there's nothing's been better than listening to Mike Greenberg every Monday and get up after another horrible Jet loss.
I would just, like I said, my only criticism would be the Tommy DeVito play, and you got some options. I mean, even 800 more, you're looking at Drake May. So, which May, he's going to have the 5 rushing attempts and could get in the end zone on his feet. So I just like it. I'd like, a lot of people better than Tommy DeVito.
Given the matchup, I think I might go May over Caleb Williams there.
I think so. The guy that I think sneaks in there for me, because I was looking at it, I did change the defense. I think that was a good call there. But I think, but before I did that, I actually upgraded there. I think Jameis Winston, man, I think that they're going to have to throw the ball a ton against Kansas City. I think that guy has been solid week in, week out. I'm going for it, man. I'm going to go for it with Jameis Winston.
Can't argue with that.
And then we're going to go ahead and improve. I'm going to go ahead and bring out it looks like we're going to go with Keon Coleman to get another piece of that Buffalo game right there. So, again, the opposite side of the game. So we're going to like it. I think this is going to be a good lineup right here. Says Joe, look at the CBS Week 17 DST. Seattle or no beat the waiver wire?
Who are they? All right, so who are they?
So-
Seattle or New Orleans, I guess. Not Seattle or no.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's check it
Seattle
out.
or nah. So Seattle is in Chicago. That's on Thursday Night Football, and New Orleans is home against the Raiders. I would have to say New Orleans just off the top of my head because they got a home game, and the Raiders are almost as bad as the Jets, if not worse.
Yeah, the Saints defense, which isn't a very good defense, but yet like they had that game against the Rams a couple of weeks ago where they weren't bad, and then they were pretty good against the shitty Giants. But home against the Raiders, I think I gotta go New Orleans there. But you know what? This is a great thing about it'd be if Seattle comes out and shuts down Green Bay tonight, that might change my answer. But as of right now, I would take that. I would play the Saint defense in that situation.
And before you get to your answer, Mike, you know what I love, dude? I love the confidence. He's already looking down the road saying, I'm going to be in the finals. So let's just call a spade, and let me just get my defense ready for the finals. I like the confidence train, Siberian.
Well,
yeah,
so
you know what?
no, go Mickey.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, no, I mean that's to me how you win championships is you get ahead of your opponent. A lot of times they're lacking a defense when they get in there, and then they're forced to take what they got because you move 2 weeks ahead. I do like Seattle, I do like New Orleans. I think I'd more waste my waiver spot, or not my waiver spot, but my bench spot on Seattle. I think that they have a better outlook throughout the season. They're a team that I was looking at a few weeks ago. Again, if you follow me on Fantasy and Frames, I give a waiver wire show every Tuesday on there. And that's a team that a few weeks ago I was saying, get on top of these guys. New Orleans, I just, without the Lattimore shadow there anymore, to me, they're kind of a shell of themselves. They've been playing decent, but I don't think that they have the potential to go long-term there. So for me, I'm going to take Seattle. That's what I'm going to waste my bench spot on. And sorry, Joe, Andrews is
no, he's talking about my tight end situation. So it brings up a question. So I have Mr. Nwoko on my bench, who actually was questionable. I got to check his status. But assuming David is playing, would you bench Andrew? Who would you, Andrews or Nwoko?
Well, I don't think it's going to matter because I'll tell you right now, McBride has had points galore this year, and he has not gotten the end zone until this week.
Nwoko's out. This week.
Huh?
Njoku's out. I didn't realize that.
So there you go. That's going to be the difference.
I think you should play Njoku today. Wink, wink, Jeff. Send the check. No, that sucks. I was actually going to tell you Andrews was still the better play, though, honestly. Just because I feel like there still isn't a whole lot of options over there going on. Man, did you see all this stuff with Deontay Johnson up there in Baltimore and how I guess he's going to be an inactive scratch today just because he's tired of not being – imagine being on that team and not getting any targets. Zay Flowers probably feels the pain there as well because, I mean, God, that guy is so good. But week in, week out, he just doesn't get the target share he deserves, He says Giants are tough against the tight end. That is true. Giants are actually, they have a pretty decent defense. That's one team. Who was it that I saw? Gosh dang it. I saw somebody throwing balls to Malik Neighbors in Vegas the other day. I was like, ooh, that could be New York probably wants to lose a few games here. I think if they lose out, I think they'll get that number one spot. And
or even two works, right? Cam Ward.
What's that?
Even number two would work, right? Cam Ward or Sanders. I don't know.
Yeah, it was Sanders. It was Sanders that was throwing him the ball. That's who it was.
Well,
yeah.
Well, but regardless, McBride breaks his streak this week and then gets in the end zone against the Patriots at home and has 11 catches for 140 yards and 1 touchdown. That's what I'm saying.
5 touchdowns to make up for lost time.
With the amount of Josh Allen and Sam Darnold I went against last week, you're probably right, Jeff.
For sure. Do you have any other daily up you want to pull up, or we could just go ahead and, I mean, we're at 50 minutes, guys. We can just go ahead and close this out. We're caught up on questions here.
I tell you, I think we close it out. We leave it on a high note that I'm going to beat Joe this week. I think that's written in stone. I don't know how we get away from it, Joe. It's a runaway freight train down the hill. I'm sorry. It's going to happen, man. I'm sorry.
Say goodbye.
Say goodbye, Randy. Goodbye, Randy. Oh, I love Trans-Siberian. I hope you're being safe over there.
Loser starts the show shirtless next Sunday.
I like it. You know what? I like it. Yes.
No.
Yeah,
There you go.
No.
I like that one.
Then we're all winners, right? Like, then we're all winners no matter what.
I like that one. We do that. Absolutely. I'm in.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Yeah, we will be back next week. We're going to get you through, especially if you're on a bye week this week and are still joining us, like our man Trans-Siberian. And once again, man, we appreciate you so much. If we haven't been invaded by aliens, Joe, I don't know if you know anything about what's going on up in your neck of the woods. My God, it's looking crazy from here.
I got to cop to that. I've just been trying to see in Jeff's window so I could see who he was playing today all week. I needed that insight.
Gotta love that.
I thought there was something. You know what, damn it.
Gotta love it. Well, guys, that'll be it for us this week. We thank you so much. We will be back next week. Make sure you're following, liking, subscribing, hitting that bell so you can get everything Triple Play Fantasy, especially basketball, baseball. And he says, my wife will be happy, shirtless.
Mine won't.
A lot of words come to mind. Happy is not one of them. You guys have yourself a good week. Again, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much. But for Triple Play Fantasy, Jeff, Joe, and myself, we will see you guys next week. Thanks again.